10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Does the poltergeist generate the person himself? Hello, friends. Today I'm going to tell you a scary story about a poltergeist. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. Sit back and we'll start. It has been noticed that poltergeists are often accompanied by the appearance of ghosts. Sometimes they are seen by participants of mysterious events. In other cases, they are recorded by devices. For example, when photographing in a poltergeist-ridden house, an image of a person who was not there at the time of photographing may appear on the film, or a tape recorder records unknown voices, whispers, muttering, footsteps. The nature of ghosts is still unclear, but there is reason to believe that these are astral entities spontaneously created by people and continuing to live their lives. At the same time, they remain somehow connected with the person who created them. In the 1970s, academician A.F. Ochatron put forward the theory of microleptons, ultra-weak particles from which, in his opinion, invisible entities are formed. The photoelectronic apparatus designed under his supervision was able to detect radiation from microleptons and translate them into the optical range. Thousands of experiments were conducted in his laboratory to create microleptonic clusters, clusters. These clusters were generated by people. When someone in the laboratory imagined an image of a person, a microlepton clot was separated from his aura, imitating the image of this person, and the device recorded it. This clot, or thought image, could move independently, which means it had its own independent being. Astral, energetic, microleptonic entities, or thought images, are created by people much more often than is commonly thought. Already in the XXI century, as a result of numerous experiments, the Swiss physicist D. Weilbrodt discovered that people, without noticing it, generate energy formations many times a day. This happens, as a rule, in moments of emotional outbursts or in an altered state of consciousness. The person became angry, amused, offended, and at the same moment unconsciously expelled from himself, or rather, from his energy shell, some invisible essence. It can be detected by infrared photography, as Ella Bacone and many other researchers did back in the 1980s. Most often, these entities have the form of shapeless formations. Bacone called them critters. In the course of their existence, they can unite into one large formation, or, conversely, break up into smaller ones that continue to live their own lives. They pass freely through the walls. Observing their behavior suggests that they have intelligence, or at least its rudiments, but the creatures are weak and sedentary. Deprived of energy supply, they quickly fade away and clearly cannot be considered full-fledged ghosts, especially those who are capable of causing a poltergeist. For the emergence of a poltergeist, a person must distinguish a very special essence from himself. Apparently, the one that Ochatron called a mental image. A strong astral thought image almost always has a humanoid form. It is created by a person who is in a state of severe stress, prolonged depression, nervous excitement, manic concentration on something, etc. Mental images are invisible, but some of them have such strong energy that for some time, often very short, they are able to appear before people in a visible form. Manifested mental images, or ghosts, can be created by mediums at spiritualistic sessions and magicians during rituals. Thought images are intelligent, but it is certainly not a human mind. They are always connected with the people who gave birth to them. A person may not be aware of the presence of such an entity, but it will be in a psychic connection with him throughout its short life, remain dependent on him, and, apparently, exert a certain influence on him itself. Who's knocking on my door? Now we can say with a high degree of confidence that the poltergeist is caused by energetically strong mental images generated by teenagers. It is teenagers who are the carriers of the vast majority of poltergeists. Teenagers, carriers of poltergeist, have serious psychological problems. Prolonged stress, depression, hidden complexes contribute to the generation of strong mental images by them. Some of the mental images appear in a visible form. As a rule, such manifestations occur on the eve of poltergeist events. Vinokurov's book Horror describes several cases of poltergeist, which were preceded by the appearance of strange strangers. In one case, a man from a repulsive external network called the apartment. He told the landlady who opened the apartment to him that he had made a mistake and hurried away. That same evening, a poltergeist began in the apartment. In another case, a man who looked like a dead man with sunken eyes looked into the window of a village house. People ran out into the yard, but he is nowhere to be found, and he couldn't hide because everything is open around. The poltergeist started 2 days later. In the USA in 1987, before the poltergeist events, a black dwarf was seen. He quickly ran through the house, ducked under the bed, and disappeared. Astral entities that manifest for a short time in the form of strange strangers and other ghosts are generated largely by the imagination of a teenager. He himself does not realize what monsters, inspired by games, comics, movies, or the surrounding reality, lurk in his memory and unconsciously break out of there in the form of frightening mental images. In the same USA, there is a known case when a ghost of a man in armor appeared several times in a poltergeist-ridden house. Later, according to the descriptions, it was determined that this was a character of a computer game popular in those years. There was a roar in the house, as if something heavy was being beaten. Chairs and sofas were overturned. Traces left by some sharp object, possibly a sword, appeared everywhere. Especially the 14-year-old son of the owners of the house got it. The boy could be pushed at any moment, hit painfully, thrown into the air. When the child moved to another place, the noisy demon followed him. Obviously, the mental images that suit the poltergeist inherit some psychological traits of their parents, only coarsened and exaggerated. In the demonstration of superhuman abilities, a tendency to malicious jokes, manifestations of violence, the demand for constant attention from others, Adolescent psychology, with its instability and craving for self-affirmation, is clearly visible. Perhaps this particular carrier of the poltergeist, if he found himself in the conditions of the other world with his superpowers, would behave exactly the same as the invisible man he spawned behaves. They scare you to survive. Experts pay attention to the element of fear present in poltergeist manifestations. Sometimes it seems that superpowers are demonstrated by invisibles for only one purpose: to frighten, keep people in constant fear. According to Walbrot, people emit energy substances at the moment of fright. Perhaps they are mainly interested in violent spirits. The creatures of Bacone, or what is released by people when they are frightened, are vital to them because it takes a lot of energy to throw plates and cabinets, to fires, to pools of blood, fish rains, and especially to appear in front of people in a visible form. Sometimes, in order to extract it from invisible people, they exert direct pressure on their psyche. Iovino Kurov in the mentioned book tells how he once spent the night in an apartment gripped by a poltergeist. He had a feeling of the strongest unreasoning fear all night. At some point, the fear thickened so much that it was impossible to breathe. According to the researcher, they, the invisible ones who arrange a poltergeist, OIV, squeeze fear out of people like water out of a sponge. It is noticed that the poltergeist lives as long as it is feared. When people get used to his antics or somehow protect themselves from them, the energy supply decreases, and this weakens the invisibility. Perhaps, at the same time, it breaks up into several entities that eventually turn into amorphous formations, similar to those photographed by Bacone. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.